Test 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Yeah, we got to find him first. CHP lost him. Everybody lost him. He was making his way down Imperial last time I saw him. Eastbound 105. Oh, nope, nope, nope. Well, we're back over towards the LAX area. We were on Imperial just a few moments ago.
We started in Long County, but what LA City 12,000 block was Silver Lake in the city.
Fire arriving here and done with this whole thing. You can see is when they just stopped. Just stopped.
I feel like I'm in a fucking deposition.
No, I got you. So when did you stop stringing?
Never stopped stringing. I'm still a stringer now, recovering stringer. When I started, actually we parked at a place that what now is Staples Center. And it was a grassy knoll. There were no gunmen there. And we would literally sit there and play Frisbee. And the competition back in the day, because I worked for somebody, I wasn't as independent as I became, but I worked for somebody. It was Newsreel, Citycopters, and Night Vision. Those were the two other companies were the competition. Night Vision occasionally had 2 vehicles out. Citycopters always had 2 vehicles out. And Newsreel, we evolved into 2 vehicles. So we would have somebody up north, somebody down south, or some kind of combination like that. And it also helped when we did those deliveries, because you had to break up the deliveries to get to the stations as quick as possible. But yeah, it was a very limited group that was out there, and we were the only ones that, at night that had a camera. There were no cell phones. There wasn't anybody, running around and taking video or tweeting about things. Basically, we got our information from the scanner. And there were some other means. We had pagers back in the day that would actually put out media alerts, but they were all very processed. It wasn't like a spur of the moment, fire page or something like that. These were things that wasn't, the fire department was dispatched, they showed up, there was an incident command set up, there was an actual event, and a PIO put something out. So it was a process to get that information out there. Back when, like, a good stringer would have been ahead of that curve anyway. The good stringer would have, heard the dispatch, and that was one of the things too. It's like inflections in people's voices. Those were like subtle things like that. Really, for a good stringer back in the day, you would listen to the fire dispatch and you just knew the way the dispatcher said things. If it was the verbiage or just the tone of their voice, you knew if that was a real fire. You knew if that was just, some kind of BS or whatever. And you would make that, there were times where even back in the day on the road, you were there, at a fire getting shots of the fire trucks pulling up because you just knew it was real. These guys are, God bless them. They're all union, and they basically punch their clock and they're like, my 8 hours is done. I'm going home. And there wasn't an overnight, and they tried doing overnights. I know that for a fact, and I'm proud to say it, even though now I'm part of the machine itself, but I'm proud to say it that we did a better job. We did a way better job than anybody at the station, and it was basically because if you didn't bring something to the table, you didn't get paid. So there's a little bit of a carrot and a stick going on there, to get that job done. You want to get those pictures. You have to compete. You've got to get this stuff sold. Of course, there's personal pride, like I said in the beginning. It's like I felt like I am bringing something to these people in the morning or in the afternoon or even the people involved. It's like you're seeing what happened, and that was a huge personal part of it for me. But the reality was, it's like if you weren't doing this, you weren't getting paid. While the station guys, they're getting paid. They're getting paid. If they get the fire trucks driving away, they're going to get paid. But if we're not getting the fire trucks arriving, we're not getting paid. So there was that difference going on, and that was the reason why the stations needed us at night. And every now and then, there was national stories that would pop up. There was a lot of times, that it wasn't just the local news that needed some filler about what was going on overnight. Every now and then we got huge stories. We all did. They needed us basically for those dramatic shots. They needed us for that, like when you're flipping through the newspaper, because that's where it all started. You flipping through the newspaper, you see a picture that catches your eye, you're going to read that article. And it's the same thing with the news. If you've got something that they're going to show that's spectacular, I mean, people watching, they're going to stop eating their cereal and be like, oh, what is that? You know, what's going on there? And that's what it was. It was what we could put on the morning news to grab people's attention, and that's the reason why the networks needed us, because we brought spectacular pictures to their news. Back in the day, when you were working for somebody else, story goes national, you got a pat on the back. You know what I mean? Ennis Cosby, yeah, that was, you know, that's a little point of contention. You know, Bob might have been there before me. I might have been there. I don't really, to this day, I honestly don't know. It's not like a, you know, a pat on the back. I can remember the story really well. I had a trainee with me. We were in Hollywood on some shooting. I was sitting in the van and I heard a call for a man down on the 405 near Skirball. And in my mind, I was picturing somebody changing a tire, like a pedestrian hit while changing a tire, which is it's a good news story. You know, people might be watching going, oh, that's so gross, and you're making money on people's misery. You know, this is what we do, you know, and you might look at it like that, and in my mind, that's a very negative way to look at it. And the way I see it is like I'm telling people, don't get out of your car and change your tire. How about that? You know, I've got a terrible story about that if you guys want to just do reminiscing. But anyways, we haul butt, we get there, and it turned out to be the Ennis Cosby shooting. But nobody knew. All I knew, it was a shooting. I knew there was a Mercedes there. The mystery woman was there in the fur coat. Ooh. Anyways, but it's a sad story. Ultimately, it was a terrible, sad story. At that time, I really didn't know, because they had transported Ennis. All I knew it was a shooting. And so we turned it in, and that became a huge story. That made a lot of money for newsreel. And what did I get out of it? I got a pat on the back, you know? And then I got hard copy calling and Inside Edition, and I got to do interviews. And, you know, this is, again, it's just the business and who you're working with. Well, they paid you money to do that interview, and you wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for us. You know, type of attitude, like they were putting guilt on me, and I was just like, I shot that story, you know what I mean? So yeah, there's, you know, it's not all, you know, love and hugs. It's a business. It's a business, and you got to protect yourself, you know, ultimately. So
you're giving it to them as what you see, and,
right.
And people can relate to that, and that's what they appreciate. Did that come naturally? Or was it purposeful as a plan or an angle? It
was nothing. I got to tell you, nothing in my life was planned, and that's the honest truth. I really never set out to say like, oh, I'm going to do this so I can do that. I would get to a situation, and then I would say, oh, I'd like to do that. Like I wanted to report. Don't get me wrong. I wanted to report. But I didn't go into it with this attitude that I'm going to be Stu Mundel. I am only who I can. I am only me. And this is it. And I actually gave that advice because, you know, when we would train other people, they'd be like, oh, how do you get? And I would say to them, it's like, don't try to be Larry Welk. Don't try to be Scott Reif. Try to be you. You know, just be the best you can be, you know? And, you know, personally, I don't even see myself as a very social person, but I really enjoy the interaction when it comes to talking about news. I really enjoy the interaction when we're on a chase. I really enjoy the interaction on a fire, and you know, and where it's going to go and how this is going to happen, and a physical rescue, things like that. To me, the passion is there because there is passion. I enjoy watching the first responders saving a life and explaining to people that, you know, basically this is your fire department. This is your tax money. These are, you know, this is the home team, guys, you know, saving a life. You know, for me, I did it the right way. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have an agent. I had this task, I accomplished it, I got good at it, I went to the next task. I always try to push the envelope, you know, with my camera skills. I try to push the envelope with my reporting skills. I try to push the envelope with how I'm working the scan or how I'm relating information. It always is me trying to be a better version of me. There's no doubt about that. Is there fails? Oh yeah, there are fails. Are you kidding me? But that's the thing is, if you're not failing, you're not learning. You're entering into a world where you're doing a public service. Regardless how you look at it, you're doing a public service. And if you want to serve the public correctly, is do it without an agenda, do it fact-based, and also be ethical is part of it. You know, compassionate. There's always got to be compassion, even though we see some things that, you know, we're always compassionate, but you always, you know, you have to deal with it how you deal with it. And I don't think going home and getting high or drinking yourself into a stupor is a way to handle it. I think talking about it and is the way to handle things like that. But what I was going to say is, if you're entering into this business right now, that's really what you have to look at it like, is that you are entering into a public service. Do a public service, and don't go in with an agenda. Be very fact-based, be very honest, and just do the best job that you can do safely is really the only legit advice I could give to a blanket audience.
The Cinderella story